They knocked at the door, and Cyril followed his aunts into grandfather's hot, Swedish room. "Come on," said Grandfather Pinner. "Don't hang about. What is it? What you been up to?" He was sitting in front of a roaring fire, clasping his stick. He had a thick rug over his knees. On his lap there lay a beautiful pale yellow silk handkerchief. "It's Cyril, father," said Josephine shyly. And she took Cyril's hand and led him forward. "Good afternoon, grandfather," said Cyril, trying to take his hand out of Aunt Josephine's. Grandfather Pinner shot his eyes at Cyril in the way he was famous for. Where was Auntie Con? She stood on the other side of Aunt Josephine, her long arms hung down in front of her, her hands were clasped. She never took her eyes off grandfather. "Well," said Grandfather Pinner, beginning to thump, "what have you got to tell me?" What had he got to tell him? Cyril felt himself smiling like a perfect imbecile. The room was stifling, too. But Aunt Josephine came to his rescue. She cried brightly, "Cyril says his father is still very fond of meringues, father dear." "Eh," said Grandfather Pinner, curving his hand like a purple meringue shell over one ear. Josephine repeated, "Cyril says his father is still very fond of meringues." "Can't hear," said old Colonel Pinner. And he waved Josephine away with his stick, then pointed with his stick to Cyril. "Tell me what she's trying to say," he said. "My God!" "Must I?" said Cyril, blushing and staring at Aunt Josephine. "Do, dear," she smiled. "It will please him so much." "Come on, out with it," cried Colonel Pinner testily, beginning to thump again. And Cyril leaned forward and yelled, "Father's still very fond of meringues." At that Grandfather Pinner jumped as though he had been shot. "Don't shout," he cried. "What's the matter with the boy? Meringues. What about em?" "Oh, Aunt Josephine, must we go on?" groaned Cyril desperately. "It's quite all right, dear boy," said Aunt Josephine, as though he and she were at the dentist's together. "He'll understand in a minute." And she whispered to Cyril, "He's getting a bit deaf, you know." Then she leaned forward and really bawled at Grandfather Pinner, "Cyril only wanted to tell you, father dear, that his father is still very fond of meringues." Colonel Pinner heard and brooded, looking Cyril up and down. "What an extraordinary thing," said old Grandfather Pinner. "What an extraordinary thing to come all this way here to tell me." And Cyril felt it was. "Yes, I shall send Cyril the watch," said Josephine. "That would be very nice," said Constantia. "I seem to remember last time he came there was some little trouble about the time."